going on, Jerome's Minnesota Vikings back at it, full padded practice today at TCO Performance Center Bar and Grill. A day off tomorrow, and then they're back at it on Friday. I had a couple of press conferences before the practice today. Special teams coordinator Matt Daniels, Coach Hatt, as well as offense coordinator Wes Phillips fed the local media jackals. So we want to dive into some of their comments. And so we need to apologize to Coach Daniels because when the Vikings brought back Duke Shelley, we had made the snide remark that Duke Shelley is the only good thing about Duke besides Coach K, right? But there's another one, Matt Daniels. So played like linebacker, safety for the Blue Devils before coming to the league. Great special teams player, then got into coaching. But there's also like a great clip floating around where it's Coach Hatt pregame in the locker room, like trying to hype up his teammates, and he's like, Duke effing football. It's like, who's ever talked about Duke football like that? Anyways, Coach Hatt. So what sort of annoyed me is that no one asked him why Addison's returning punts. Like I had to like skim the press conference twice just to make sure I didn't miss it. No one asked him like, hey, why is your much maligned star receiver 2 returning punts? Anyways, so Daniels, he led off with heat and humidity. So right meow, it's like 92 degrees in the great state of Minnesota, also with like nearly 100% humidity. It's not great outside. But he did talk about how that does require more attention and communication because guys get tired and guys can get sloppy, guys can get lazy, his words, and that can result in injuries and bad plays and whatnot. Also, the new kickoff rules he talked about extensively does open up for innovation and creativity. Could be more opportunities for more players since now, there's going to be more active kick returns as opposed to it's just touchback and whatever. And he said that the strategy is going to win and lose a lot of teams games for the first 3 weeks before teams get a full handle on what this is going to be. And I think that's true. And I think that if you have a good plan for it, both returning and covering, I think that does give you a significant competitive advantage early in the season. And I think Coach Daniels is one of the best special teams coordinators in the game, and he's looking forward to that. And glad that we got him, man. Types of players needed will change. So generally, like the old kickoff rules, when there are returns, like you want guys that can just be burners, get down there and wreak some havoc. Diamond Danchesena, both on kick and punt returns, would fit the mold. But now, since it's going to be a smaller area and there is going to be more returns, having some slower guys with better noses for the football could make sense. So I think that the style of special teams player and the style of player that's kept on the bottom of the 53 could certainly change. Plus, he talked about the differences between the NFL and XFL. So difference of where the ball is spotted by 5 yards, more space in the NFL, and also there is a difference between the playmakers with the ball in their hands given space versus NFL versus XFL. It just is what it is. Plus, he has thought about deploying multiple returners since kickers can basically place the ball wherever they want to. They could put it in dead space where the ball is still alive. He did mention, of course, King Kene is going to be returner 1. When asked about multiple returners, he did say Brandon Powell before. He just like, that's all we're comfortable sharing. Okay. Has considered non-kickers kicking off as well. Didn't name anyone by name, but he talked about how they looked into the percentage from the XFL of when the kicker is actually involved in the play. So first off, having a guy that is more capable of tackling versus your kicker, also removing your kicker from a spot where that greatly increases his chance of injury, where he's having to make a tackle, everyone makes sense, right? So if you have a position guy who can put the ball in play consistently, that would be an advantage. And then Coach Hatt talked about how this is how fine-tooth comb he goes. Like, well, sometimes they have to warm up properly so that they're not pulling a groin, and otherwise I would get fired or something like that. And he did specifically say running back, so I wonder what that's all about. Like, Myles Gaskin, is he kicking off? But also, like, bury the lead, like Kamaguruje Hill has 7 career kickoffs along a 65, including, I think he had 3 last year for Carolina, 4 in 2017 for the Eagles. I hate that I know that off the top of my head. Anyways, I also praised Theo Jackson's versatility and courage. I think that he's a guy that's going to be rising up. I think Theo Jackson could be a bit like Anthony Harris, where he rises up, special teams, practice squad guy, eventually gets on the field, plays some good special teams, then go from there. I truly believe that Theo Jackson's going to bring something. Also talked about kicking competition. He would have liked to kept John Parker Roma a little bit longer, and Will Rockhurd. He wanted to win the competition as opposed to just be handed the job because he was a draft pick, but just sort of is what it is. You could tell like Daniels wasn't really in the loop on the roster move, but also his stance on player safety has changed because like back in the day, like Matt Daniels was a racked up and jacked up special teams flying down the highway, getting after things, linebacker, safety. But now he talked about how his stance has changed since he's on the sideline. Now his coach is in, just like woo woo. And he praised the new padded helmets for practices. I think eventually they're going to be incorporated into games, but just trying to make the game as safe as possible for the players makes sense. And then you got Wes Phillips feeding the local media jackals. So he wears the same hat as Kevin O'Connell, but it doesn't look the same. Like I don't want to buy one. I don't know. Well, what hat was Daniels wearing? Oh, that's Duke again. That's a good hat too, man. Actually, I lied. I mean, that's still a good hat. I still want it. Still going to get it. Anyways, Wes Phillips. So here's what happens when the Vikings stream press conferences. Like they chop it up. So Harrison Phillips talked, Matt Daniels talked, and then Wes Phillips talked. But they usually incorporate like the beginning of the next press conference, if applicable. So after Daniels was done, Wes Phillips walks up. He's like, well, we have an announcement about Justin Jefferson, and then the feed cut off. It's just like, it definitely was my Sopranos moment. I was like, what does it mean? And then I found, Jefferson's just having a vet rest day today, which obviously not a big deal. Probably a couple veterans going to get days off here or there throughout training camp. So certainly no big deal. I have big praise for Bobby Tonyan. Also talked about the depth of the tight end room. One of the reporters hinted at the deepest tight end room in the league, and Phillips definitely didn't shoot that thing down. Talked about how he loves Johnny Munt. Of course, they go back to the Rams days. Josh Oliver, great 6 offensive lineman, but also he could be involved in the passing game as well. Then talked about how McCarthy, being quick. The John Wooden line, be quick, don't hurry. And the Vikings are looking really good, whether it's Darnold, whether it's McCarthy, and getting in and out of the huddle. Just things like that where you got to be quick, but don't be frantic about it. Don't freak out. Just be under control. And that's what matters. Plus, went on quite a bit about Aaron Jones, utilizing him as a receiver, both on screens and checkdowns. Plus, his leadership, what he's able to relay as a player back to the coaches from the field. Like it's great having a veteran like Aaron Jones in that locker room. Also, it says it's great to bring in guys who score touchdowns. Good to have players who score touchdowns. Need to know that when I take over as GM of the Falcons. Also, he talked about how J.J. McCarthy benefits with running the second-team offense versus the first-team defense. And he basically talked about how having that better caliber of defense against him, it will help him in spots where the pocket gets muddied, where things break down, where everything's going against them, and it is a little bit more of a live fire exercise in training camp. Also, he talked about how Flo does things with the first team defense that he doesn't necessarily do with the second or third teamers, so you're getting a more pure look in that spot. Also, he mentioned that the second team offensive line is a strong group, so you do have veterans like Dalton Reisner, Quisenberry on there, Diamond Dan Feeney, also mixed in with Walter Rouse, as well as you got Michael Juergens, as well as Henry Bird working in there at one of the interior offensive line spots. So, overall, second team is second team, sure, but it's basically what McCarthy's going to be utilizing in the preseason, because Jefferson's not going to play preseason. Addison probably won't play a ton either. Hawkinson's obviously not there. Aaron Jones doesn't need preseason. Darisaw and O'Neal and probably Bradbury won't be out there in preseason either. So, it is what it is. Also, he talked about how, so a lot of highlights come from 7-on-7, but he does stress that 7-on-7 is an offensive drill, and it's a spot where quarterbacks can get looks at things. There's no pass rush. There's no anything like that. But basically, take all the 7-on-7 highlights with a grain of salt, including red zone, even though, it's one thing if you look good in red zone because you're supposed to, but what if you look bad like Darnold did? I don't know, man. But that's it. It's a look at Wes Phillips as well as Coach Hat, Matt Daniels feeding the media jackals ahead of practice number 8 today. It is 8, right? Yeah, doesn't matter. Anyways, you guys are the best. You know what to do. Skol, production value.